Hey everyone, welcome back to Today Assets Report, your trusted source for the latest breaking news in the crypto world. I'm your host, and today we've got some absolutely incredible news that's been sending shockwaves through the entire XRP community. If you've been holding XRP or if you've been following the regulatory battles that have been going on for what seems like forever, then you absolutely need to hear what just came out of the White House. This could be the moment we've all been waiting for. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this might change everything. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, smash that notification bell, and let's dive right into what could be the most significant development for XRP holders in years. Trust me, you do not want to miss a single word of what I'm about to share with you today because this is huge, and the timing couldn't be more perfect for the crypto market as a whole. Now, before we get into the specifics of what the White House just announced, let's take a quick step back and remember where we've been with XRP over the past few years. If you've been in the crypto space for any amount of time, you know that XRP has been through an absolute roller coaster of regulatory uncertainty, legal battles, and what many people have called an unfair targeting by certain regulatory agencies. Ripple Labs, the company behind XRP, has been fighting tooth and nail against the Securities and Exchange Commission in what has become one of the most watched legal cases in cryptocurrency history. This lawsuit has dragged on for years, creating massive uncertainty for investors, for the technology itself, and for the entire industry that relies on clear regulatory frameworks. The community has been incredibly patient, incredibly supportive, and frankly, incredibly resilient through all of this chaos. But here's the thing that makes today's news so significant. We're finally starting to see real movement at the highest levels of government, and it's movement in the direction that XRP holders have been hoping for since day one. So what exactly did the White House say, and why is this causing such a massive reaction across social media, trading platforms, and crypto news outlets everywhere? Well, according to multiple verified sources and official statements that have been released just within the last several hours, the White House has made comments suggesting a much more favorable regulatory approach toward digital assets in general. And there are specific indicators that suggest XRP could benefit enormously from this shift in policy. Now, I want to be crystal clear here because I know how important accuracy is when we're talking about your investments and your financial future. The White House didn't come out and say XRP is amazing and everyone should buy it, because that's not how government communications work. But what they did do is signal a clear intention to create regulatory clarity, to work with the crypto industry rather than against it, and to establish frameworks that allow innovation to flourish while still protecting consumers. This is exactly the kind of balanced approach that the XRP community and Ripple Labs have been advocating for throughout this entire legal battle, and it represents a fundamental shift from the hostile regulatory environment we've seen over the past several years. Let me break down the specific language that was used in these White House statements because the details really matter here, and I want you to understand exactly why this is such a big deal for XRP specifically. The administration's spokesperson made reference to establishing clear rules of the road for digital assets, which is terminology that has been consistently used by Ripple's legal team and by XRP advocates who have been arguing that the previous regulatory approach was vague, inconsistent, and frankly unfair to companies that were trying to operate legally. They also mentioned the importance of ensuring that the United States remains competitive in the global digital economy, which is hugely significant because XRP's entire business model is built around facilitating international transactions and competing with legacy financial systems that are slow and expensive. When the White House starts talking about global competitiveness in the context of digital assets, they're essentially acknowledging what many of us have known for years, that cryptocurrencies like XRP represent the future of how money moves around the world. And if the US doesn't create a reasonable regulatory environment, all of that innovation and all of those jobs and all of that economic activity is going to move to other countries that are more welcoming. Now, here's where things get even more interesting, and this is the part that has really got the XRP community absolutely buzzing with excitement and anticipation. There have been reports, and I want to emphasize that these are coming from multiple credible sources within Washington, D.C., that suggest there have been direct communications between White House officials and representatives from Ripple Labs. Now, we don't have complete transcripts of these conversations, and we probably never will because a lot of this stuff happens behind closed doors. But the fact that these conversations are happening at all is incredibly significant. Think about it for a second. Just a couple of years ago, the regulatory environment was so hostile that it felt like Ripple was being treated like some kind of criminal organization just for trying to build technology that makes international payments faster and cheaper. The fact that we've gone from that environment to one where the White House is apparently willing to sit down and have productive conversations about how to regulate this space appropriately, that's a complete 180 in terms of the political and regulatory climate, and it should give every XRP holder a tremendous amount of hope about what the future might look like. Let's talk about the timing of all of this, because timing in the crypto market is absolutely everything, and the timing of this White House statement couldn't possibly be better for XRP and for the broader cryptocurrency market. We're coming off a period where there's been renewed institutional interest in digital assets, where major financial institutions are finally starting to take blockchain technology seriously, and where the infrastructure for mainstream crypto adoption is really starting to come together in meaningful ways. If you've been watching the charts at all over the past few weeks and months, you've probably noticed that XRP has been showing some really interesting price action, with strong support levels holding and what appears to be accumulation happening by larger investors who seem to know something that the general public might not be aware of yet. Now, with this news coming out of the White House, all of that technical analysis and all of that price action is starting to make a lot more sense. Smart money often moves before major announcements become public knowledge, and if you look at the trading volume and the price patterns we've been seeing, it certainly seems like some big players were positioning themselves for exactly this kind of positive regulatory development. One of the most important aspects of this White House statement that I think deserves special attention is the emphasis on working with Congress to pass actual legislation that provides regulatory clarity for the entire cryptocurrency industry. This is crucial because up until now, so much of the regulatory landscape has been determined by enforcement actions, by lawsuits, by agencies kind of making up the rules as they go along, and that kind of regulatory uncertainty is absolutely poisonous for innovation and for investment. Companies need to know what the rules are before they can confidently build products, raise capital, or expand their operations, and individuals need to know what the tax implications are and what their legal rights and responsibilities are before they can confidently invest their hard-earned money. The fact that the White House is now pushing for actual legislation, for laws that are passed through the democratic process and that provide clear guidelines for everyone to follow, this is the kind of regulatory maturity that the crypto industry has desperately needed for years. And for XRP specifically, which has been caught in this legal limbo for so long, having clear legislation would essentially remove all of the uncertainty that has been weighing on the price and on investor confidence. Now, I know some of you watching this are probably thinking, okay, this all sounds great, but what does this actually mean for the price of XRP, and what does this mean for my portfolio? And those are absolutely valid questions because at the end of the day, we're all here because we believe in the technology, but we also want to see our investments grow and succeed. So let me give you my honest assessment based on everything I'm seeing, everything I'm reading, and everything I'm hearing from sources within the industry. If this White House statement leads to actual regulatory clarity, if Congress does pass legislation that creates a reasonable framework for digital assets, and if the SEC either settles with Ripple or if Ripple wins their case outright, then I believe we could see a massive revaluation of XRP's price because so much of the current price is suppressed by regulatory uncertainty and by concerns about what might happen with the lawsuit. Think about all the institutional investors who have been sitting on the sidelines, who want to get involved with XRP because they see the technology's potential, but who can't pull the trigger because their compliance departments won't let them invest in assets with unclear regulatory status. Once that uncertainty is removed, once there's a clear legal framework in place, all of that institutional capital that's been waiting on the sidelines could flood into XRP, and that's when we could see the kind of price movements that long-term holders have been patiently waiting for. So, what should you actually do with this information, and how should XRP holders and potential investors respond to this news? Well, first and foremost, I want to emphasize that I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, and you should always do your own research and make investment decisions based on your own financial situation and risk tolerance. But with that disclaimer out of the way, here's my perspective on what makes sense, given what we know right now. If you're already holding XRP, this news should give you significant confidence that your patience is likely to be rewarded and that the regulatory uncertainty that's been suppressing the price could be resolved in the relatively near future. If you're considering getting into XRP but you've been waiting on the sidelines because of regulatory concerns, this White House statement suggests that those concerns may soon be addressed, although you'll still want to watch for actual concrete policy changes rather than just statements of intent. And if you're someone who's been completely skeptical about XRP because of the regulatory issues, this might be the time to reconsider your position and at least take another serious look at the technology, the partnerships, the use cases, and the potential upside if regulatory clarity does materialize. The key thing to remember is that markets often move in anticipation of events rather than after they happen. So by the time there's complete regulatory certainty, much of the price appreciation may have already occurred. Before we wrap up today's video, I want to leave you with some final thoughts about what this moment represents for the cryptocurrency industry as a whole and for everyone who's been believing in and supporting these technologies through some really difficult times. What we're witnessing right now with this White House statement and the broader shift towards sensible cryptocurrency regulation is validation for everyone who argued that digital assets represent the future of finance. For everyone who believed that technology and innovation would ultimately prevail over regulatory resistance, and for everyone who had the courage and the conviction to stay invested during periods of massive uncertainty and fear. The path forward still isn't going to be perfectly smooth. There are still going to be challenges and obstacles and setbacks along the way, but the direction of travel is becoming increasingly clear, and that direction is toward mainstream adoption, regulatory clarity, and integration of cryptocurrency technologies into the traditional financial system. For XRP specifically, this could be the beginning of a new chapter where the technology is finally judged on its merits rather than being held back by regulatory uncertainty, and where the years of development, partnership building, and patient persistence by Ripple Labs finally pay off in a massive way. This is the good news we've been waiting for, and while we still need to see how it all plays out in terms of actual legislation and court decisions, the signals we're getting from the highest levels of government are more positive than they've been in years. Thanks so much for watching Today Assets Report. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any future updates on this developing story. Hit that like button if you found this information valuable, and drop a comment below letting me know what you think about this White House statement and what it means for XRP's future.